The western end of the canal began in Buffalo. This city, on Lake Erie, was a tiny town back in 1817 as construction began. The canal builders were looking for a way to get to Lake Erie from the east coast. If you look on a map, it may seem as though ships can pass between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. But Niagara Falls is between the two bodies of water, and ships could not go up or down a falls like Niagara. If a canal were made all the way to Lake Erie, ships could use that lake to travel to Lake Huron and Lake Michigan easily, allowing them to reach the entire upper Midwest as far as Chicago. By the middle of the 19th century, locks were built in Sault Ste. Marie, linking Buffalo to ports as far west as Duluth, Minnesota on Lake Superior, almost halfway across the continent. The Erie Canal was a vital way to connect the cities on the East Coast with the growing country further west, in a time when moving goods by water was the easiest and sometimes the only way to get them from place to place. From Buffalo, the canal cut north and then started east. At Lockport, the canal used a series of locks to go over the same hill which forms Niagara Falls, called the Niagara Escarpment. From there it cut across to Rochester. Though Rochester is a city on Lake Ontario, the original Erie Canal bypassed this lake entirely, passing just a few miles from it, but never connecting to it. Travel to the west was the original goal for the Erie Canal, and Lake Ontario did not fill this critical need. Though by 1829, just 4 years after the canal was built, a connection to Lake Ontario was made via the Oswego Canal. All along the canal's route in this part of upstate New York, there are towns whose names end in port. Places like Lockport, Brockport, and Weedsport were port towns along the old Erie Canal. The Erie Canal passes just north of the Finger Lakes and on into Syracuse in central New York, where it ran through the center of the city. East of Syracuse, a long section of the Old Erie Canal is preserved in Old Erie Canal State Historic Park. This park is one of the best places to look for traces of the old canal. The cities of Rome, then Utica, come next, and finally Schenectady, and down 27 locks into Albany. From there, the Erie Canal joined the Hudson River, connecting the entire upper Midwest to New York City by water. When the canal opened, it completely changed trade patterns. Shipping a ton of wheat from Buffalo to New York City went from $100 by road down to just $10 by canal, and it took a fraction of the time to go from one place to another. Goods from new settlements in the Midwest poured through the canal, heading east towards New York City. In 1829, 3,640 bushels of wheat were transported down the canal. 8 years later, there were 500,000 bushels shipped, and 4 years after that, it topped 1,000,000 bushels, making New York City the busiest port in America by far. The Erie Canal was widened and deepened several times in the 19th century and finally was completely rebuilt. The old Erie Canal did not follow the same route as the current one. When the canal was rebuilt in 1917 to accommodate larger boats, the route was changed, and parts of the old canal were filled in. It no longer goes through the center of Rochester or Syracuse, and it now ends near Buffalo and Albany, but not actually in either of those two cities. All of that has been changed. But the Erie Canal still connects the Hudson River with Lake Erie, and its effects, which shaped the development of New York City and New York State, can still be felt today.